This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome. We're an award-winning show dedicated to empowering women in every profession through inspiring stories and expert insights. No topics off limits on our show. We power women on the road to success with expert and celebrity interviews and information you need. I'm Shelley.
And this is Kathy.
Are the demands at work and stress of your job getting you tied in knots? Do you feel undervalued and underappreciated? Jamie Martin is an executive coach for women. She knows firsthand the challenges women face in fast-paced workplaces. She's a former product manager at DoubleClick and Google, so she knows what can happen. She's leveraged her 17 years in tech to empower women to go beyond surface-level goals, unleash their voice, shatter limiting beliefs, and open doors to new career possibilities. Jamie's listed as one of the top 20 executive coaches in Chicago by Influence Digest. She's helped people manage self-doubt, advocate for themselves, and better manage their time. Jamie's with us today to offer her great insight and give us tips on how to silence doubt and live life on our own terms. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
You know, Jamie...
I'm just going to say, you want to step into my office?
There you go. Yeah.
For a night operating equipment.
It's one of those where you do have to love what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Kathy, like I said, she has incredible intestinal fortitude. What she does is just absolutely amazing on all that big equipment. Oh, my. So, Jamie, before we start, did you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what got you started in the direction of becoming an executive coach?
Oh, for sure. And I think it's interesting because my story really does feed into where I am now. So I was an industrial operations engineer by training in college. And as a result, I got access to leadership development. And it blew my mind away. I was just like, this is amazing stuff. And the more and more I started getting exposed to leadership development, whether I was like, there's something here that I really like and I want to dive into further. But the voice in my head, the doubt in my head was like, oh, you're too young. Who's going to listen to you? What are you thinking? You need more experience. And then the other side was my parents' voice in my head saying, you can't just go out there and do coaching. It's hard work. You'll never get clients. You'll never make money. You just won't thrive. You need to have a safe environment. And so as a result, I spent 17 years in technology doing product management because product actually brought together my engineering background in a way that really resonated with me. I'm a people first person, and product management is all about looking at your clients and saying, and their problems and saying, how do I help them? How do I break this down further? And the best story I have for describing this is that in one of my jobs, we had a client come to us and ask for a custom report. We decided to get curious as a company, and because we were like, why do they need this custom report? By asking them the questions instead of just saying yes, we found out that they were taking that report, another report, putting them into Excel, combining them together to actually create a whole nother report. When they told us this other report and what it looks like, we said, did you know you can get that out of the box? You don't need us to build something for you. We already built it. You already pay for it. And that's what I love about product management is that we get to dive into the problems and figure out what truly is it that somebody wants. And that's where coaching comes into play. Mm-hmm. Because I do the same thing is I ask questions and I dive into what's the stories they're telling themselves or that they've been told that are stopping them from doing the thing that they actually want to do. Now, I ignored myself for a very long time because I kept having the coaching thing come up and come up and come up. And the universe really gave me a kick in the butt because my last job, I was doing infertility and I was being bullied at work. My boss actually was the one who pointed it out to me. So he was the CTO at the organization and I was the VP of product. And he looked at me one day and he said, "Jamie, you're being bullied." I went, "What? That's what this is called?" I was being bullied by the CEO.
Why?
It's interesting. Now looking back, it's because I knew him the longest of all of the employees, and he was unintentionally and not thinking about it, trying to make sure that I wasn't a favorite, like that I wasn't seen as a favorite, because he wanted everybody to have an equal playing field. So he has no idea that he did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can look at it at this point and be like, "Oh, you don't have a clue what you were doing."
Right. Yeah.
But it was very much in his head, and being able to look at it from a different perspective. He was trying to make sure that no one else thought that I was getting favoritism. And so he would challenge me more than anybody else. And so that's what resulted. And with that experience paired up with going through IVF and the whole cycle of that story, I got to a point where I was fully burnt out. And my husband looked at me like, "We can't do this anymore."
Right.
And I love my husband to death because he looked at me and said, "What's going to be different?" He said, "I think I need to do the coaching thing." That's when I started, I hired my own coach to help me break out of my own mindset of which program to sign up for, because I went through an intensive training program. And he was so supportive throughout this whole thing. By the end of that program, I found the power in coaching and advocating for yourself, because I realized that I could not work at that company anymore. For as much as I wanted to be somebody who could bring home money plus do the side gig, it was killing me to be at that company. And so I had the support of my coach at that time and the practice from her in negotiating leaving, having them let me go. So I was able to negotiate keeping our insurance and getting a little bit of a severance package so that I could say bye.
Sure.
And that medical extension actually resulted in my son.
Oh, and well, your stress had gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they covered all the costs.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah,
we did
that's
a whole
huge.
IVF cycle on their bill. It was amazing.
Yeah, because that can break the bank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It can. And so that's the story that got me into coaching.
You've been in the trenches. You know exactly what it feels like. I think a lot of women get stuck in fields they may not want to be in jobs they don't want to be in. They're not being recognized, or they're getting bullied. That happens. I think you quite often in a workplace can deal with people who are not really self-aware. They may not be intentionally doing some of these things, but they are. And then there are people who are just lousy bosses. They'd be better off not being managers, And I think it seems like women have more self-doubt than men. Why do you think that is? What do you think some of the biggest reasons women have self-doubt and still feel undervalued and underappreciated?
I actually would challenge that assumption.
Oh, okay.
I think women are more articulate about it. We talk about it more. Men hide it, and they don't ever vocalize it. But the doubt is there, and I've seen it. I've seen it in COOs. I've seen it director level. I've seen it all across the board. They're better at hiding it than we are, and the self-reflection piece. So they're really good at putting it really far down and burying it deep.
Mm-hmm.
But the stories that play out are still there. I've seen it on both sides. What I will say is that we tend to beat ourselves up. Women tend to beat ourselves up more for having those stories, because we see them, we're bringing them up, whereas guys are stuffing them so far down that it takes a lot to get the stories to actually show up.
Men compartmentalize more than women. Yeah.
Very well. Very well.
And women have to vent. I know that if I don't talk about something, even if it's to myself, sometimes that's a good thing because I never disagree with myself.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to blow off some steam.
Granted, they did say, I just read a research article saying that if you are angry, the best thing that you can do is actually meditate or do yoga. Because when we vent or, crush plates like people are doing now, or break things, or kickboxing, that we're actually raising our dopamine levels. And that actually exasperates our anger and our frustration. Whereas if we were to meditate and calm our nervous system down with yoga or something very quiet and soothing, it does the opposite. It really quiets our system down. We can get to a centered place that allows us to think more logically about it, which I thought was fascinating. So I actually pair the two up for my clients because I do think you need to vent, but then have them actually center back in shortly after that. So real quick, short vent, and then let's do some meditation or do some yoga or do something that would ground you.
That makes sense.
Actually.
Yeah, you do.
I joined Rumble boxing where it's these boxing classes, and it just gets out that frustration. But then because I live 2 blocks from the ocean, then I'll go for a nice walk, and then I'll just sit in the sand, and then I'm like, okay, now I can just calm, I can focus, I can just listen to the waves, and then, or I'll alternate the boxing with my yoga and Pilates, and then go for that walk on the beach, and where I can meditate and take both. And it really does, the combination of helps me. Like, I'm a high strung person, and it works.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you found that, because that pairing up of the two is it's magical.
It seems like when you're meditating, you're taking your mind off the source of your problem and maybe able to look at it and realize, it's not as big as I thought it was. You can think maybe more logically when you take time to do that?
You think more logically, but you also allow yourself to process the emotion. So, we were just talking about how guys stuff things down. We as a society have been told that we're not allowed to process emotion. It's not something you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to suck it up and work hard.
I hate that phrase, suck it up.
Oh, I hate it too. And I grew up with it, and it just makes me cringe at it.
Suck it up, buttercup. It's like, really? Get over yourself. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Because we all have trauma.
Yeah.
We all have challenges, and that's part of living, right? It's moving through that. And if we just suck it up, we're actually not moving through it.
We're
true. Not giving ourselves that chance to experience it so that we can come out the other side with the lessons learned, right? And that's, I think, going back to your question about women, or your comment about women getting stuck, is exactly that, is that we've been trained to just suck it up, suck it up, suck it up. And as a result, all of our desires get stuffed down because they're not realistic. They're not things we're supposed to go after. And so, by allowing ourselves to emote a bit and experience that emotion in order to calmly get into a place of not necessarily just logic, but more intuition, right? We get to access our intuition better and understand the bigger picture.
And women have good intuition. I think in many ways, women have keener intuition than men. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Men have, and they have the trigger. So they get an idea and it's a trigger. They don't ever question the idea. Whereas women, I think we get an idea, we soak it in for a bit, and then we decide whether or not it's worth going after. And so we're able to discern between intuition and fear-driven action. So as long as it's practiced.
Oh, practice makes, almost perfect. We have to practice everything in life, and we forget, when we were little kids, you got to practice how to walk. I mean, you first start crawling and you don't get it right the first time.
Right. I mean, you have to practice eating.
Oh, yeah.
Right. We have to teach children to eat.
Sure. Yes. Every
Oh.
single thing we do, we didn't always do well.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
If you're enjoying this informative episode of Women Road Warriors, I wanted to mention Kathy and I explore all kinds of topics that will power you on the road to success. We feature a lot of expert interviews. Plus, we feature celebrities and women who've been trailblazers. Please check out our podcast at womenroadwarriors.com and click on our episodes page. We're also available wherever you listen to podcasts, on all the major podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it. Check us out and bookmark our podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other sites. And tell others about us. We want to help as many women as possible. Coach Jamie Martin developed her passion for helping people succeed after being exposed to leadership development. After working as a product manager for DoubleClick and Google, she became an executive coach for women, leveraging her 17 years of experience in that world. She teaches women to unleash their voice and open up doors to new career possibilities. She asks her clients, what's the story they've been telling themselves, and what have they been told that's stopping them from doing what they actually want to do? Jamie opens up the possibilities for her clients. She helps women claim their time in fast-paced work environments, advance their careers, and be seen as the true executives that they are. Jamie's been featured by Forbes, Data Bites by Women in Data, and Boxer Conversations with Coaches for her transformative approach. Jamie, how do we silence doubt and live life on our own terms? I like that. That's on your website, along with the slogan, dive deep, lean in, and practice. All of those are really great mottos and slogans.
Yeah, I think the key piece is really that last piece of dive deep. So before we can silence doubt, we have to know what our doubt is. And oftentimes our doubt is like that client I was talking about before, where we believe one thing to be true, but really there's more to the story, right? They wanted an ultimate vision for their report. So we have to actually dive further into what the doubt is. And an example of this from like a self-expression or a self-journey piece is I hear a lot of people be like, I'm going to go get an MBA. And when I sit down and talk to them about it, they're like, well, it's because it's what I'm supposed to do. Well, let's talk about that. What is the MBA going to give you? And eventually, typically the story comes out from a parent, right?
Yeah.
They say, that's what you're supposed to do next in order to succeed. And so being able to really start to uncover those stories that are having us go forward, because when we are going after something that doesn't align with us, we are hiding the other thing. And between those two stories, that self-doubt exists.
Alignment is a word you hear a lot, not being aligned. What exactly does that mean? Is it basically things just don't fit and you're just kind of out of whack, or what?
Yes, it really is. It's sitting there and kind of being like, I'm going to go to the next job because the next job is going to pay me, but I know I don't feel good. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to keep going down this career path. I want something new, refreshing, or the value-driven thing, right? So, for example, in our early 20s, we may be just building up our experiences and not realizing it doesn't matter where I work. But as you get older, you might start to feel like, ooh, wait a second, I don't want to work just anywhere. I want to work somewhere that there's impact. I want to be driven. I want to actually create something that brings value to the world. And if you go that other direction and keep following the other career path, that's where alignment is or where misalignment occurs. The other thing too is even when we're in a workplace where we like what we're doing, if we're not showing up as ourselves. So for example, if you think you have to act like, women is a great example, is that we have a lot of leadership examples in the male world. And so as a result, we've seen a lot of women move into that male-driven kind of view of leadership, and they don't feel good in it because they're actually forgetting the feminine side. They're forgetting that there's something else there that we bring that brings a totally different picture to the table. Yep. And so when we lean into that whole piece, that's where alignment can come in as a leader.
Do you think that's where you run into some women bosses who are more like drill sergeants?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Because they've seen it, interpreted it. Again, none of this is intentional. I really don't see people waking up and going, this is how I'm going to act today. But what they see is they see men doing it, succeeding and moving up and saying, this is the story. This is how leadership is supposed to flow, and embodying it, which is unfortunate because we miss out on the brilliance that them as women bring to the table.
Well, women are natural nurturers, and that brings out the best in people because people feel like they can thrive and they can maybe be more themselves or be more creative in their job.
Sure. Yeah. And when we tap into that piece, we bring more collaboration, we bring more insight. We're able to actually solve problems in a way that is so much smoother and streamlined than what most people experience in corporate America.
I had to really unravel my own brain, my own thought processes, to get where I am today, to feel in a space where I can give back and be all that I can be, live my own truth and be who I am authentically, right? Because I'm so different than everyone. I mean, we're all different, but it took a long time. Number one, it took me till I was 40 to figure out I had to unlearn all the brainwashing and all that negative narrative that I was telling myself just from listening to other people. But the hardest part about was relearning and trying to figure out who I am by myself without that self-doubt nagging me. Like I had become such a prisoner in my own head that I was having a hard time looking at people in the eye. Does that make sense? Like it
totally makes sense.
Like it was just so, and I mean, I had a good career. I was a nurse, but I just couldn't. I was my own worst enemy. And it was really, really difficult to unravel all that and then figure out who I was. And then the hardest part was really liking who I was. I'm thinking, damn, I'm cool. I got some good qualities going on, right? So,
yeah. When you think about it, maybe women are less likely to like themselves as much as men do. You think?
Yes.
Jamie?
I do think so. I think part of it is the narrative. I think that's going to shift because of social media. I think we're going to start to see men, we already are starting to see men doubt themselves even more with the women empowerment movement of the last decade or so. But it's going to shift again with Instagram and social media just because of the stories that are out there. But women are so inundated with messages of how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to look, what is the right way to act. I mean, the number of times my parents would look at me and say, "Did you wear that to work today?" And I was like, "Yeah, I work in tech. Who cares?"
Right.
I've gone to some of the best steakhouses in Chicago wearing a hoodie because I didn't know where we're going. and just owning it, and saying, well, this is who I am, and that's okay. And if somebody has a problem, that's their problem, not mine. But it takes so much of us to have to, like Kathy, you were saying, unprogram those stories, unearth them, unprogram them.
Yep.
And then when we have a clean slate, it's like, oh, but who am I? And that's a scary moment when you try to do that on your own.
How do women get out of their own way? Because I think we do create our own obstacles. I know I personally am a perfectionist, and I've had to really work on myself because I can be hard on myself. It's like, doggone it, why did I make a mistake?
Yeah.
I guess somehow I think I'm supposed to be perfect. That's just not even achievable.
I had to learn to self-talk my way through it,
Yeah.
When I get a negative thought coming in or, feeling low on myself, I'm like, wait a minute, stop right there, Missy. Stop, put the brakes on, rewind and rethink something that's got a positive note to it. And I just cancel out anything negative.
Yeah. And that works for some people, but I found that for other people, like for me, that doesn't work because there's a voice in my head being like, but we're battling each other now. And so I've actually had to look at my own self-doubt and say, where's that coming from? What's this voice really about? Because we all have parts of us that have grown up. And one of my clients, I did some meditation where she actually went back to her 4-year-old self, went back to her 7-year-old self, and started asking questions of that self of like, well, where did the story come from? And what do you need from me in order to move forward? And oftentimes that voice of negativity is a voice that's really afraid of what's next, what's coming up. They're scared. And so when we go into that voice and find out what they're scared about and how we can support them, they can become an advocate with us and start to move us through so that when they're no longer saying negative things, they're actually saying, hey, here's something to look at. This is what I need from this situation. And it can really help move you forward.
You give people new perspectives so they can unpack things. When we have certain voices in our heads, they've probably been there since we were children, and we just think they're naturally there. But they are giving us messages we shouldn't have.
Yes. And often it's coming from a real, genuine place, right? The voices that are telling us negative things, it's because they're trying to protect you. Mm-hmm. They don't want you to be in a place where you were, where somebody at age of 7 was being bullied, or somebody told you that your hair was wacky and it made you feel bad, or whatever the story is that voice is latched onto. It's trying to protect you from the outside world. But that's where we get stuck, right? And so we have to start to ask the voices what it needs to feel safe, even as we move into that being in uncomfortable situation, going into outside of our comfort zone.
So what would you say are the biggest obstacles women have today in any career, really? I would like to believe that companies are being more empathic, if you will, empathetic. They're more concerned, and I know that a lot of the employees are being more demanding about work-life balance and things like that. What are the biggest obstacles women have? And has there been progress? I see it in the past 20 years anyway.
I would say the biggest obstacles right now are really focused in on making sure that women feel that they can have a career and still have a personal life, whatever that personal life looks like. That's true for men right now too, because of COVID. COVID gave them a whole other perspective too, but it's even bigger now, right? We are lacking maternity leave. We are lacking support for caregivers. That is starting to shift, but it's still super slow because there's this again, it's this mentality of you're supposed to work hard, play hard, right? And you need to be there 40 hours a week, even if you spend 10 of those hours doing nothing because you have to show face, right? Because there's plenty of women out there who are just really efficient. I was one of those efficient people who was like, well, I got everything done in 3 days. Great. You know?
Yeah.
Now what? I can't leave until 5 because,
yeah.
you know. Because
Been there, done that. It's like,
right.
and there's nothing worse than for me to sit and not do something. It's like, I'm done. What do I do now? When I was a kid in school, I'd run around because the classroom, because I was bored, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And my mental.
I can see that.
Yeah. In my head, it's like, okay, I got done with my work. Can I go home now? You know.
Exactly. And that's like, that's still a tension point, right? Where it's this, well, I finished. Let me go on. The other thread I would say is that women still face this unfortunate distinction that when we speak our voice, it sounds like we're aggressive. And as a result, we get labeled the B word.
Yep.
Right? That is still in the space. Whereas if you take the same guy, a guy, and he says exactly the same thing in exactly the same tone, he's thought of as a leader. So that is something that still needs to be broken down.
It really does.
Very much.
Yep.
Because otherwise there's, we won't be able to impact organizations in the way that will benefit everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how people will just kind of recoil when a woman speaks firmly and assertively, whereas a man, when he uses his big voice, they're like, oh, okay, you make so much sense and I will do this now, you know?
Yeah. And they could be literally back to back.
Yeah.
The woman says it and then the guy says it. And I mean, I've seen that happen where the woman said it and everybody ignored her. And then the man said it and was like, well, that's brilliant. At that point, I don't remember if I stepped in. I think I really regret not stepping in because I'm pretty sure I didn't. I was just like, wow.
Well, there's an element of fear there. I'm not sure people always speak up at work. They value their job.
Yeah. And that's huge on the women's side of things too, is that we like security. And so we're told not to rock the boat from an early age. So rocking the boat is speaking up and saying things. And that's, but that's how we're going to break these cycles. The Me Too movement, speaking up and starting to have a voice that says, we're not going to accept this anymore. You can do the same thing at work. Now, the key here is that there's the balance between pushing and pushing and pushing until you're just background noise, and pushing enough to say, okay, I understand my voice has been heard and nothing's going to change here. And I'm okay with moving on from this place in order to move to another place. So I did that with my last job a couple of times where I looked at the CEO and I said, you hired me for my voice. So if you don't like what I have to say, I'm sorry.
Good for you.
This is what you hired me for. And it was empowering to be able to say that in a way where it was like, you made this choice. You knew ahead of time that I was not going to be the quiet one. When you sat back, I was going to challenge the status quo. I was going to, ask questions that might make people uncomfortable.
I like the way you did that, though. You put the responsibility on your boss's shoulders and basically said, hey, you knew this going in.
Yeah, for sure. And when we do that, they go, oh, you're right. I did. And he said that to me. He's like, you're right, I did. Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He didn't say something about insubordination. Because I actually had a boss like that. If you disagreed with him, he'd say, well, to a woman, you're being insubordinate. And of course, I'd come back, no, it's a difference of opinion, not insubordination.
I love that. I hope everybody heard that piece. I feel like we got to repeat it. Like when we have a difference of opinion, it's not insubordination. It's like, this is where I really lean into the conversation of diversity, right? Diversity is not about how many, African Americans you have in your office, or how many LGBTQ people, or how many women. It's about the difference of opinion and experience that we bring to the table. because if we keep leaning into differing opinions is insubordination, we're not going to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have our heads down and we're going to just keep doing the thing that the boss thinks is right. And well, we've seen how well that's worked for most of corporate America.
Right.
It's not been the best.
Well, when you think about it, the most successful companies bring out the best in all of their people. It is a pooling of talent that makes that company successful. And not everybody thinks the same.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bring those differing opinions in, magic can occur. There's so much when we start to build off of other people's ideas where you can actually get to a place that you never thought you could have, because you're building off of it in a way that really brings more of a 360 view versus a singular view.
I like that.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
As women, we need to discover the stories that will help push us forward. Getting our stories and inner messages aligned will push back the self-doubt, according to executive coach Jamie Martin. We need to be aligned to grow on our career path. If we don't show up as ourselves, even in a career that we love, we forget ourselves. We can't forget our feminine side and our leadership styles. When we tap into that piece, we bring more to the table with stronger collaboration. We have power through our authenticity as women. That will make us stronger as leaders because we're more aligned. We need to stop being inundated by the messages of how we're supposed to act and be who we're supposed to be. Stop that negative inner voice. Figure out what the voice of negativity really means. Go into that voice and find out what you're scared about to advocate for yourself. Jamie Martin is sharing with us what women need to do to succeed as executives and how she helps coach them. Jamie, I saw on your website you also say go big or go home. I like that.
I can say that with my job.
Oh, man. Yes, you can. Really big.
Nobody can trump that one.
No, that equipment you drive is really, really big.
I'm sure my son would love to see that. He's a car fanatic.
Oh, this gives a whole new meaning to Tonka truck.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
It's awesome. But yeah, go big or go home. It's not about necessarily, when we think about it, it's about push, 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 push. But I want to change the narrative from really use your voice. Use what you've been given in order to start to change the environment, create a ripple effect. And that doesn't mean that you have to exhaust yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to burn yourself out. It means that you have to start to recenter yourself, reconnect to that intuition and that voice, and be confident enough to say, it's okay if somebody disagrees with me, because I don't, I'm going to backtrack. I'm actually going to give a story on this one. An example of this is I was in a meeting at a company a few years, or about 10 years now, where the COO, I had just been there about 4 months. The COO was feared by everyone. So no one talked. No one spoke up. especially spoke up against him. And he proceeded to lamb blast one of our partners. And I was sitting there going, that's not right. What he's saying isn't even accurate. And he's putting blame on somebody who has actually come and met us halfway, and we have not met them. And so I spoke up. I told him he was wrong. I let the table, cards fall on the table. And I walked out, and my mentor at the time was like, "Ooh, you're going to get your pink slip." And in that moment, I said to myself, if I'm going to get my pink slip so best, I don't want to work here. And I'm okay with going into any interview telling them that story as to why I left, and saying, if that's not a value of yours, then we're not a good fit. So that's, to me, going big or going home, is being willing to say, it's worth it to me to find out whether or not this is an organization who's willing to hear my voice and put it out there. And if it's not, okay, I'll move on. And by the way, I stayed there for 5 more years.
So you found value at the company, but you also felt empowered. You were able to, you weren't betraying yourself. And I think women quite often will betray themselves, stick in a situation or not speak up because of the fear, because of the self-doubt. Then it just festers.
Exactly. And it grows bigger and bigger, and you grow smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're just doing the tasks. And what's unfortunate is often what ends up happening is you do such a great job executing the tasks, you get more on your plate. And this is where recognition stops.
And that's happening everywhere. Oh, here, you did such a great job. How about you do the job of 10 more people?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And no pay raise, no bonuses, no nothing. And you're doing such a great, there's no even that piece. They're like, you're doing such a great job. They're saying, hey, here's the new project, right? So there's not even that space for, hey, I want to acknowledge you for what you're contributing to this organization and how you're bringing it forward. And I think that that's such a critical thing that we need to start leaning into, and understanding that not everybody likes to be acknowledged in public.
True.
A lot of companies like to do that quarterly best person and best employee thing. And some people just don't like that. They just want their boss to say, hey, I really appreciated how you said that in the meeting. I think it really had people thinking in a different way.
Well, when you think about it as children, we grow up with that. We get grades for our work. We get praises from the teacher, from our parents, from people who love us. And then we become adults, and it's like, yeah, you're on your own.
Right. You're on your own. You shouldn't need this.
Right. Yeah. Are you insecure? Why do you need so much recognition? Because everybody does. Everybody wants to hear they did a good job. Acknowledgement, recognition.
Yeah. And I would say anybody listening, really, it's not just even saying you're doing a good job, but actually adding in what value did the person bring to the table. Because when we can get to that place, people feel like it feels more genuine and they can accept it. Where I think companies are at this place where they're like trying to pat people on the shoulder, but it feels really empty because all they're saying is, oh, good job. Right. But it almost feels like robotic. But when you can start to connect it to an actual value, it's like, oh, you saw that. You saw me.
People need that, especially today. With all of the tech, with all the social media, the stuff that's so digital, so plastic, we need to feel value, and I don't think we feel valued. And Jamie, I love your perspectives. You're bringing strength to women with your coaching. I know we just have a few more minutes. I want people to be able to reach out to you. Do you work with people virtually?
I do. I work over the phone is what I find is the best, but I do Zoom calls also. So I work with people globally.
Excellent. Where do people reach out to you?
So they can find me at www.jamiemartincoaching.com. That's the best place to find me. And then you can see my social media links there to see what I'm up to on those platforms.
I could see where you'd be a great boss. I wish you'd been my boss years ago.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I've had people say that to me before where they're like, I think you're going to have to go back to corporate America just so you can be a boss to people, like, because we need that example. And I'm just like, I'm currently trying to create that with the people I coach, really help instill that value system into how they show up so that they can be bosses that are just incredible.
That'd be huge. You're making improvements going forward, and that makes people so much happier, so much more productive. You're improving quality of life. I mean, it's seriously paying it forward. It's terrific.
Yeah. And it's fun.
That always helps. If it isn't fun, then it's drudgery.
Right. Exactly.
Although I've done plenty of drudgery in my life, but you just kind of grin and bear it, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes you do. You know, I've worked with some clients where I'm like, hey, you're stuck here right now. We're moving through things, but you're going to have to start to understand how to be in this place for a little bit longer. Like if they're looking for a job because we've realized that this job is really not a good fit for them. It's really draining them. It's like we're gonna have to work on building that muscle of how do I move through it and not, lose myself in it.
Sure. Great messages. I wish I could talk to you for another hour here, Jamie. There's so much to unpack. I love your insight. This is really helpful. What's your website again?
JamieMartinCoaching.com.
Terrific. Well, thank you for being on the show, Jamie, and sharing some of your insight. This makes so much sense. Every single boss needs to hear you, especially the ones that are the stodgy old ones that want to be stuck in ways.
Oh, yes. Yes. They need a whole year-long program to deprogram.
I was going to say
so
deprogram them. Yes. Thank you, Jamie. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. On our website, we also have a selection of podcasts just for women. There are a series of podcasts from different podcasters. So if you're in the mood for women's podcasts, just click the Power Network tab on womenroadwarriors.com. You'll have a variety of shows to listen to anytime you want to. Podcasts made for women. Women Road Warriors is on all the major podcast channels like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, and others. So check us out, and please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.